Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Let's cue the intro. This is the #1 podcast to learn marketing strategies for your board game. Whether you're just starting on your first game or an experienced designer, you've come to the right place. My name is Nalin, and let's talk marketing for your game. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Today, we're really lucky to have Kenny Chapman on the show to talk about his game Knights of the Hound table. So, Kenny, really, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I am a huge fan of podcasts, so I'm very excited to be on one. It's always exciting for me.
Awesome. Well, just to get us started, I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got into, creating this game, and also a little bit about your game too, before we go into the details about marketing.
Yeah, so my name's Kenny Chapman, and I actually made our board game called Knights of the Hound table with 3 of my friends from high school. We've been friends since high school, and we found ourselves playing more and more board games as we kind of got older, and it was actually a great way for us to stay in touch and keep doing things when we came back for breaks. And we decided finally maybe we should try to make one. And it was a really great way for us to keep in touch and stay involved with each other's lives. We just ended up spending a lot more time talking to each other. So we finally came up with the idea for Knights of the Hound table, which is a deck building card game for 2 to 4 players, in which you draft your army of hounds and then you go to battle against another army of hounds to take control of what we're calling Boneshire. And so, we don't have too much experience in the board game world. I work at DreamWorks Animation, so I come from kind of the animated cartoon side of things. And we have somebody who works in social media on our team and somebody who works in video production, which came in handy a lot during the Kickstarter. But that's just a little bit of an overview of the team and the game and me.
Love it. Well, I really like, that you said that board games is kind of one of the ways that brings you guys together, because that's honestly how I first got into board games too. It just really brings lots of people together, different backgrounds, like you and your friends even. Everyone had different backgrounds and coming together to work towards something, work towards a goal. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
So just to kind of dig right in, so let's talk about during the pre-launch stage. Can you tell us more about what types of marketing you did to prepare for your campaign?
Yeah. We didn't have a ton of money. We each put in a little bit of money to get this started. So I don't think we had a lot of, everything we could possibly do at our fingertips. One thing that we used, and I think it gets trickier and trickier as a lot of these social media apps get smarter, was we had a pretty strict regimen of trying to follow a lot of accounts that we thought would be interested in our game. So people who are interested in board games, board game companies, designers, publishers, people like that on our Instagram. And our hope would be to just continue following and hope for follow backs to kind of grow our audience and get more eyes on the game and possibly share it, and just kind of get out there in the ether. So one thing that I think was really big for us was getting a decent Instagram following. So we would post once a day to stay in the algorithm. A lot of the times we would show off what we thought was our strongest piece, which was our art, and hope to just kind of grow and get a little bit of an audience there, which I think worked pretty well for us organically. On top of that, one thing that we did use, one of our people on our team, Cole Jarvis, is really great with Facebook ads and social media. So we put a little bit of money in running a Facebook ad for email subscribers. And that worked pretty successful for us. Our lead magnet, or our what we were promising, was a free version of the print and play for signing up, as well as a chance to win a free copy of the prototype version of the game getting mailed to you right away. So we basically promised that every 100 email subscribers will send out a copy of the prototype, which I think worked pretty well for us. We found really good return rates on that email subscription.
Wow. Yeah, you guys did quite a bit there with the Instagram and also the Facebook ads. I'd love to kind of dig into each of these separately.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Instagram, can you tell me more about kind of why you chose that platform? And also you mentioned doing a post each day? Did you do like hashtag research, or just kind of how did you find people to follow?
Yeah, so I think we did a lot was we dug through hashtags that we thought would be relatable to us. So a lot of the times that's using like hashtag board games or board game design. But, with our game too, we did think there was a really strong chance that people would potentially donate to our game and be a fan of our game based off of the dog element. So we also tried to find a lot of accounts and people who are just dog fanatics. So a lot of Instagrams like dog, puppy, things like that, we thought would be a good place to target too, because our board game and the Kickstarter we had, there was a lot of ways to get your dog into the game. So it was an interesting Venn diagram of trying to figure out what types of accounts we should target. I think board games was something that we focused on more heavily, and finding people in those hashtags, because at the end of the day, we do want to be a board game company. But we did think that we would get a lot of traction. And to be honest, I think, dog lovers and dog people are some of the more passionate people on Instagram and other social media platforms. So that was kind of our strategy for finding people and looking for people there. On top of the idea of posting, we used a lot of different hashtags, and I'd actually be curious. I think we evolved in what hashtags we had started using from like the beginning of our Instagram. A lot of it was like testing and trying out different things. But to look at some of the hashtags that we ended up using dogs of Instagram, Kickstarter, board games, tabletop. And then we tried to use some specific to the actual art that we posted. And one thing that we talked about, which Cole on our team was very good about, was just making sure you're staying in the algorithm so that when a big post happens, it will show. So for Instagram, that was making sure to post once a day, but not more than that. And using those hashtags and letting it grow organically. So that was something we followed with Instagram and Facebook.
Got it. So it's pretty much like learning what the platform kind of needs for you to get shown to more people.
Yeah, and I think you asked too, I'm sorry I mentioned this, why specifically Instagram? For us, one thing that we want to stand for as far as a board game company goes is we want to do some interesting things with art. There's a lot of really awesome board games that use a lot of really cool looking art, but there's also a lot of board games that we love that have somewhat generic art, or not as much detail specifically in the art. And we want to be something that kind of art that stands out, it looks different, is something that you haven't seen a ton before. So for Knights of the Hound Table, that's kind of a little bit more of this like 90s cartoons vibe. And so for us, with such an aggressive point on aesthetic, we thought Instagram would be a good platform to marry that to, because it is all about aesthetic and the art of it. So it felt like a natural place for us.
Yeah, you guys clearly did a lot of research to kind of match the audience with kind of the brand you're building and kind of the channel, which is, I think, really great. Because as you were saying, Instagram is huge for dog lovers. I have a dog myself, and I follow a ton of dog Instagram handles too. Do you think that or kind of organic conversations on Instagram kind of brought people to back your campaign, or how did it kind of help, you think, with the marketing part of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say up front, I think that the email subscribers helped us more than the Instagram following. I think that, if you can convince someone to click on a ad you have and give them your email, you've already kind of made it through a barrier of if they're interested enough in your game, So I think just because of the barrier of entry there is to get an email subscription, those people are more likely to convert into a donation or a sale. So I think that, we had more success there, but of course that obviously running a successful Facebook ad, you got to use at least a little bit of money. For us, we started our process so early before our Kickstarter. We launched in, I think, September of 2019. And we were starting a Facebook ad, I believe, in January of 2019. And we did that because we put in a little bit of money and we let it run at the most efficient setting over a long period of time. So we would only activate and target people when it was the cheapest to do so. But I think Instagram almost serves as a little bit of two purposes. One, I do think that it helps us a lot with exposure. People just hearing about us and knowing about us and knowing we're a thing, I think helps in the long run. I always see Instagram as a little bit more of a long run play, where we're building an audience, we're building a following. People who actually like the game can engage with it in different ways and come and follow us and see what's next. One thing that we did find that was really helpful for social media, specifically Instagram, was around cons. So we went to Gen Con before we launched on Kickstarter to do their first exposure play hall. And we used a lot of hashtags there, like Gen Con and things. And we saw a lot of movement and people who recognized us online. So I think that was really cool. And then we also recently went to PAX East post Kickstarter, and try to take pre-orders there. And we saw the same results. It was really helpful to use social media to help kind of triangulate that we're here, what we're doing, and kind of just get out there in the ether.
Got it. Yeah, that's really cool. A cool way to use social media is to make sure that you're kind of going with what people are talking about right now, just to keep top of mind with what we're discussing, which is great.
Definitely.
I think this is a great time to kind of segue into the Facebook stuff that you were talking about, the advertising stuff. You mentioned you started advertising in January and then did it all the way up to launch in September, which is, 9 months. Can you tell us more about, what kind of audience, how you created audiences, what types of budgets you allocated for pre-launch, how many emails you ended up collecting?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wish I had some of the more specific numbers, but I'll give you a kind of a good overview of everything that I know and remember from that time. One thing is, as I mentioned, I think we started with smaller amounts of money because we wanted to essentially test what audience we were going for, we thought would be most successful. So with Facebook, and I know some people may know this or may not, but you can, target specific audiences or people who are interested in other types of categories. So you can target people who spend a lot of time on board game pages. You can target a lot of people who spend time on dog pages, and you can make it as specific as you want. We could make an audience that's only people who like dogs and like board games, which sounds really, really great for us. And it is, but it's also a much smaller SKU. So it's potentially going to reach a smaller audience. So we had to try to find the balance of how much money do we want to allocate to a really specific SKU that may get us better results, or a wider SKU where it gets in front of more eyeballs, but maybe isn't as specific to our game. So we did a lot of testing in that sense, where we would kind of have multiple SKUs running at the same time, something that's a little bit wider like board games, something that's a little bit more specific like Kickstarter, people who donate to Kickstarters. And then we had one that was like the top tier, which is, people who love dogs and Kickstarters and board games, and see kind of which one was giving us the best results to be able to put more money into that. Another thing that we did, which I mentioned why we started in January, was you can kind of choose your settings for Facebook ads on how aggressive you want them to be. So you can ask Facebook to spend all of your budget in 2 days if you wanted to, and just really get it in front of as many people as you can. Our approach was, let's put in a certain chunk of money, and let's pick it on the most efficient and cheapest setting. So this is basically our ad choosing when they think the most efficient time for us to spend our money is, and find, as they say, the best click rate price. So we can start to get good numbers of essentially how much it costs us per click when they hit our link. And then we can also find a rate of how much money we spend per somebody giving us their email. One thing that's great about Facebook, which we highly recommend, and I think this could be good advice for people starting out, and as we're learning now, as we continue our email subscription process after the Kickstarter, is the longer you have a single ad running, the smarter it gets. So for instance, we've been running an ad since right after our Kickstarter money came through, and it's just gotten so smart that our cost per acquisition and our click rate has just never been lower. So one thing I can recommend is find a way to continue one ad going for as long as you possibly can, because your audience, the ad will get smarter and smarter and smarter, and it'll be more and more efficient for you. So I think that's a little bit of what we did. You know, I will say, I think at the beginning when we started, we put in about $30 at a time, just an easy $30 just to see what was succeeding and what wasn't succeeding. And once we figured out kind of where we wanted to be, I think we ended up spending about $200 on our email subscribers. And I will say the numbers are a little bit skewed because we did get a lot of organic email subscriptions from our friends and Reddit, and also the con that we went to. We did really well with email subscribers. But I think we ended up with around, I think it was about 600, 550 at launch.
Nice. Okay. So that was a lot of really good information there.
Oh, thank you.
I kind of wanted to like break that down a little bit. You mentioned kind of starting small, testing out, which is, I love that methodology. I kind of call it like the crawl, walk, run methodology.
Yeah.
Like learn a little bit, figure out where your bearing's at, and then you start getting faster and faster. So I absolutely love that. When you're talking about audiences, you mentioned doing that trade-off between super specific niche where it's like dog, board games, crowdfunding, that gives you a smaller audience versus like, something that might not be as niche, but is, has a larger audience pool. Do you remember which one you ended up going with?
Yeah, I think we've spent some time in a little bit of each. I actually think, if I remember correctly, the people who donated to Kickstarter board games, people who are active on Kickstarter, I think that was our biggest success. And I do think that's because Kickstarter is just such its own thing. People who are familiar with it and know how it works and what to expect, I think are just more likely to go through the steps of donating to a Kickstarter once it happens. I think they're just familiar with the process a lot. So I did think that was a success for us, was kind of making sure that you targeted people who are familiar with Kickstarter, who spend time on Kickstarter, who click other ads and things for Kickstarter pages. I think that was probably the most successful we had over our large chunk of time. I will say one thing that's changed now kind of post Kickstarter is we've been able to create our own lookalike audience. So I think for people who don't know, it's just when you have enough emails collected and people who donated to your campaign, so we have the email of people who donated to our campaign, you can start to create a lookalike audience of, well, these are the people who actually did give us money, so we should target more people like them, essentially.
Yeah, I really love those lookalike audiences from post-campaign marketing. They give the best returns.
Yeah, for sure. And it took us a little bit of time to get there just because we were so slowly kind of organically growing. We needed to get a certain amount of emails we felt good about to start it, but that's definitely been a big step for us.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you started, you were at around like 600 something emails before you launched. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us like how you felt, that this was the right amount of emails, how you knew this was the right amount to kind of launch and get funded? Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think luckily for our game and what we were looking for, we weren't asking for a ton of money. We essentially wanted to ask for exactly how much the production of the game would cost. Minus the shipping, because we basically made a call internally, like we wanted to do this. We wanted this game to be made no matter what. So we wanted to find the number that we felt like we would make this no matter what, where it wouldn't feel like a failure. So we didn't end up asking for too huge of a goal. I think we asked for $3,100. We also knew, and I think this is fair to say, especially with smaller companies, we knew that we would have a little bit of friends and family support. I think when you invest so much time into a board game and you really turn it into a real thing, you start to get a lot of questions and comments and feedback from family members and friends. I had a lot of people asking me and seeing on social media, oh, whoa, that's so cool. You guys are doing a board game. It looks really awesome. Like, yeah, tell me about it. You do have a little bit of a support system there. So combining the success we had with the email subscribers and the friends and family support we had, and our smaller goal, we felt pretty confident we would be able to fund. One thing is we went a little bit on the overkill side, because we wanted to play, and maybe we can talk to this a little bit later in the podcast, more specifically, but we wanted to fund in the first 2 days. Because a lot of the things we've read is that Kickstarter can give you a bump in their algorithm and get more eyeballs on your page if you fund more quickly. So, I will say one thing is, and I think I've talked a lot like I know all the answers, and this is a great example of me not knowing. We had no idea how well our Kickstarter or our email subscribers would convert to donations. And sadly, we still don't have the exact numbers on that because we had a little bit of Google Pixel issues. It was a little bit harder for us to track our email subscribers converting into Kickstarter donations. So I actually couldn't tell you exactly how well it did. But we did feel really confident that we did the best we could with the budget we had as far as email goes.
Yeah. No, that was a really, really good answer because you talked about, friends and family support, all your network supporting, as well as these emails on top of it too. So I think that is what a lot of people honestly kind of forget, that they have a really strong network of friends and families and just people in their network in general who want to support the campaign because they know that you've been working on it. So I think it's great that you brought that up too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always an interesting balance because, we said, well, I mean, if we get funded, because of our friends and family, are we really making a board game company or do we just have really nice friends, So we wanted to make sure it's just an interesting idea to try to fan the flames. I think if you can fan the flames, you can get funded. If you can get eyes in the Kickstarter, then you'll see if the public wants your game or doesn't. As long as people can actually see the page and make a decision of if they like it or don't, then we kind of feel like we've done our job.
Yeah, so I think this is a great kind of segue into the next part of this podcast where we talk about kind of what marketing you did during the campaign, right? You talked about all these emails to try to get funded within the first 2 days. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, so we tried to do a couple different tactics. One thing is which I know a lot of Kickstarters do and talk about is we did do an early bird special. We basically offered a cheaper discounted price of the game if you were one of the first 40 people to back the game. So it was a specific tier where there were only 40 of the quantity left. And if you did back it, then you would get it at a cheaper price. So we were hoping that would entice people to not wait and see if the game was going to fund or donate, but would be willing to put the money in early because they would get it at a cheaper price. So that was one tactic that we did. Another thing we did was just being kind of annoying and active on email and social media. So we made sure our email subscribers knew exactly when the page was happening and what time it would go live. We sent them a reminder email, I believe, a week out, a day out, and then as soon as it went live. And that was the only time, we very much subscribe to don't over email your email subscribers because in all honesty, it's probably going to lead to more unsubscribes than it does, engaging fans. So we want to make sure we only use that when we have important stuff to share. So that was the only time we were really annoying about it. On top of that, one thing that I actually do think not everyone does, but I think was actually pretty effective for us was, we have a Facebook page too, and we had a lot of followers through that. You running a Facebook ad, you end up just getting some Facebook followers on your page, just because they click around. We made an event actually for when our Kickstarter went live. And one reason that we did that, and this event was only for people who followed the Knights of the Hound Table page. One reason that that's really effective is that Facebook actually sends them a notification that they have an event starting or an event's about to start. And it's almost a really nice organic reminder that doesn't even look like it's from us. That looks like it's from them, letting them know exactly when it's time to donate. So I would say overall, our strategy was to make sure that everybody just had the notifications that they needed as soon as it went live. And then on top of that, it was just a lot of us being like, hello, friends and family. If you were planning on donating, if you could do it this day, that would be amazing.
I love it. It's like you were making a huge kind of spectacle of the launch day. Have everyone just look at the page on launch day, getting notifications from everywhere, from your email, from your Facebook, from Instagram, everything, all on launch day.
Yeah, it was definitely a really aggressive push for us because we just wanted to try to hit that Kickstarter algorithm as best we could and then see if we could take it off from there.
Very cool. So did you end up getting funded within the first 2 days as planned?
Yeah, so we actually funded in 100 minutes, which was really, really exciting for us. We had a really great influx of people from our email subscription, friends and family, everything like that. One thing that's great about, specifically what was good about our game is we had a couple of the higher expensive tiers for ways to get your dog involved in the game. And dog people are very much willing to spend money on their dog. So we were lucky enough to have some of those more expensive tiers go early, which helped us get to our goal faster.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I can definitely vouch for that. Dog people definitely willing to spend money on their dog.
For sure. Yeah, I am definitely one of those people as well.
And can you talk to us more about, after those first few days, what kind of tactics did you guys roll out? Because, campaigns last for 30 days, right? 30 to 60 days. What did you guys end up doing?
Yeah, I will say this is something that I'd love to continue exploring and get more feedback on and honestly just study other people's Kickstarter campaigns, because I do think this is tough as far as continuing to get the keep the ball rolling. Everyone typically sees a little bit of a dip in the middle of their campaign because there's not as much urgency. There's excitement in the beginning and potentially early bird specials and everything like that. And then there's the don't miss out feeling, the fear of missing out at the end of a Kickstarter campaign. But you're right, there's a solid, 20 days in the middle there where it just doesn't feel like, it feels a little stale. And, I will say, I'll mention a couple of things that we tried, but I don't actually feel we're very successful. One thing that we did was we went through social media and we tried to do a couple of comedic challenges where essentially, however much money is donated in this specific, 1 or 2 day period, one of the creators of the game will do something stupid for you. So for instance, I think we did for every $50 donated over this next 48 hours, one of our creators will eat the hottest chicken wing, or a chicken wing of the hottest temperature for each $50 donated. So we try to do fun, stupid challenges to keep engaged like that. We had someone do like a ice bath where they had to do an ice bath and answer trivia questions for every $50 answered. And, while it was really fun and we had a blast doing it, and I think a lot of our friends had a blast doing it, the tricky thing is that, with social media, you've most likely already gotten donations from the people who are going to donate through social media. It's a little bit like you're building a fan base and you're hoping that fan base donates, but you're not necessarily going to get them to redonate or get people to donate who have decided they don't want to from doing these challenges. It's almost like you're making content for people who are already supporting you. So we didn't have a great method for trying to attract people who haven't donated. I think we were a little bit anal about trying to unturn every rock. So, we were pretty active on the tabletop design Reddit page, which, by the way, if you are designing a board game, I highly recommend being active on that Reddit page. It's wildly helpful, and it's also a great place to meet other people. We contacted a lot of people who seemed really excited about our game there and said, hey, just so you know, it's on Kickstarter if you did want to donate. And same with Instagram, people who would send us direct messages or say they really liked it. We would reach out to them and just let them know it was there. But overall, I would say I'm still struggling a little bit to keep the excitement going in that campaign middle ground.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just tried to silently laugh because I didn't want to cover over what you were talking about, but the chicken wing thing really got me.
Yeah, they were very dumb. But it was, like I said, I had a blast doing it. It doesn't really cost us anything, so we were happy to do it. It's just, I don't think it's the most effective strategy. I will say, I think if you do have a little bit more money and a little bit more donation, I have seen a lot of people, hold off reviews of their game and things like that, or even doing like a podcast or a live show. They'll hold some of that content and release it in the middle there to hopefully get a little bit of like a media bump. Which could be a successful strategy, but I'm still kind of exploring that myself.
Gotcha. So with everything that we talked about today, during the stuff that you did during the campaign, also pre-launch, what do you think was kind of the most effective, marketing thing that you did for your campaign?
Yeah, I would say I'd love to give you two small things, I guess. I do think having someone who's savvy with advertising, like digital ads, I think is really, really big. I would say our email subscribers was a really, really huge part of this. It felt like that's such a specific audience who are interested in your game. So to have a bunch of those. And then one thing too is if you really are looking to do this long term and turn it into a company, your email subscribers stay with you from game to game. So that's only going to your audience is only going to get bigger. It's only going to get better. It's only going to get more efficient. So you can always look at that investment as a long-term investment and not as much just specifically for this one Kickstarter. So I would say that was really effective for us, and we're continuing to grow on that now. I think we have just over 1,100 email subscribers now, and we're still trying to go strong for an expansion that we're working on now. But the other part, and I would really say, strongly consider this if you guys are ever in the area or have the ability to travel. Obviously, it's a little bit trickier now. But go to cons and do what you can there. And you don't necessarily need to buy a table or anything like that. Gen Con's first exposure play hall, I think it's only about $300 to get 2 tickets, and you get people that you've never met before who are going to play test your game and give you feedback. But it's a really great way to just get exposure. We went and talked to a bunch of people, shared the game with people, just showed up at a table and set up a booth. And we're just like, come try it out if you want to. It's such a concentrated audience. People are really, really accepting and willing to do that. I think that was a really great way for us to get a lot of attention and emails.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. The cons and it's just to get that face-to-face and the play testing and emails, because definitely I completely agree that it's like a long-term investment pretty much.
Yeah.
That's our building a game company. So Kenny, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing all of these insights about your game and about marketing for the game. I know that the listeners will really just love what you have to say. Before we go, can you tell us what's next for Knights of the Hound Table?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. And by the way, I wanted to say thanks too for taking on this endeavor. I mentioned to you before we started, it's a little bit of a wild west out there. And, I'm not even confident in saying that all of my answers were the best way to do things. It was just how we kind of found our path. But it's a little bit crazy. And I think there's a lot of people who have really good ideas for board games out there. And knowing how to actually turn them into a real thing is just a really great resource to have. So thank you for that. But I'd love to say, for Knights of the Hound Table, we want to keep it going. So, what our first thing is we want to have an expansion. Luckily for us, expansion is really easy for our game because it's all broken down into dog breeds. So we're essentially adding 2 new dog breeds to the game, Huskies and Corgis, as well as a couple of new cool new game mechanics and things. So we're hoping to launch that expansion in November. It's going to be called Knights of the Hound Table Sales and Tales. So we're really excited for that. So be on the lookout for us and Kickstarter there. And then we got a couple other bigger things planned. We're not just going to be a dog board game company. We've got a couple other ideas in the works.
That's really cool. Firstly, well, thank you for the kind words. And, if people want to learn more about, the second version of the game, get a copy of Knights of the Hound Table, or just learn more about you guys, where should they go to?
Yeah, I would say to go to knightsofthehoundtable.com. You'll be able to get kind of all your information there. It'll show us where our Kickstarter page is. You can still order a copy of the base game. And then we'll definitely be sure to update our website and followers with the expansion stuff as it comes out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Kenny.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is really fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Board Game Marketing Podcast. For daily tips and advice, find us in the Board Game Marketing group on Facebook. See you next week.